Hello and welcome back to our Cael language series. Today we're going to continue working on our speaking skills. This will be our 5th episode for speaking practice. But today we're going to start working on a different question on the Cael test. In today's episode, we're going to look at the independent speaking type B question, which is the second question on the Cael speaking test. Now, as we get started today, we're going to review the checklist that the raters use in order to give us a score when we complete our speaking responses. If you've seen our previous episodes, you might be quite familiar with this checklist by this point. So feel free to skip ahead about 4 or 5 minutes in this video if you'd like. But we'll start by reviewing it so that everybody knows which skills they need to practice at home and demonstrate in order to maximize their score. So the very first skill that the raters will assess is called your delivery skills. These are your public speaking skills, your presentation skills. We need to focus on the basics first. So this would be speaking with clear pronunciation, making sure that the volume is loud enough that the listener rather, can hear you, and also working on getting a comfortable speed. So not too fast, not too slow. Hopefully your speech sounds very natural. When you've got those basics covered, we then want to start working on adding in attention to rhythm and intonation. So the voice should rise and fall in intonation quite naturally as we speak. It should be easy for the listener to understand when your main idea is starting and finishing, and then the next idea is going to be presented. All of those things will be taken into account. And hopefully you can get from the start of your response to the end with very minimal pausing. We don't want long silences in the middle of our response because we'll lose the attention of the listener. So that comes a little bit with confidence and also by making sure we've got enough details that we can continue to speak about throughout the response. We're going to try as well not to interject as we speak. Interjections are those funny sounds that a lot of us make when we talk. We might say, and make these noises as we're trying to think about the next word or idea. And I think that interjecting is natural to a point. Most of us will do that once in a while. And if it only happens on occasion, it's really not a problem at all. It becomes problematic, though, when we interject frequently. So if you're saying, in the middle of just about every sentence, it will likely be quite frustrating for the listener. So again, we practice at home speaking with confidence so that we don't have to stop and we don't have to interject either. The second skill set that the raters will assess is your accuracy of language. And this falls into a couple of different categories, if you will. The first thing that we'll talk about is the transitions or the use of conjunctions. So as we're speaking, hopefully you're still speaking in complete sentences, but we're always looking for ways to combine short, simpler ideas together so that we're creating more compound and complex sentence structure. We're aiming to have a good variety of structures to really impress the rater. And academic speech does use longer ideas. So when we're using connecting words to join these ideas together, and we do that correctly, we will impress the raters. We also must make sure that we're using precise vocabulary. So again, it's an academic test, so we're hoping that your vocabulary is widely developed enough that you've got some higher level, descriptive and interesting words, but the words that we choose for the responses must be accurate and precise. In other words, there must be a reason why we're choosing these words. They need to make sense in the context of the question that we're answering. We also look at the content of the response. So this really focuses in both on your main ideas and on the supporting details as well. So the very first sentence, generally speaking, will introduce the topic that the question on the test is asking you to discuss. And then you will present a couple or 3 main ideas throughout the rest of your response to support the topic. And for each main idea that you present, we want to make sure we've got a nice supporting detail or example to fully extend it. So again, the listener should be able to follow your response from beginning to end. Everything that's mentioned should be adequately explained so that we don't have any questions left over by the time you're at the end of this response. Your tone should be one of an academic setting. So this means we're not using slang and we're not using phrasal verbs or idioms too much, because that would be a little bit casual. Again, we want to sound confident and academic as we speak. Hopefully you've got enough ideas to fill the talking time. So on your Cael test, you'll be speaking either for 60 seconds, 90 seconds, or even for 2 full minutes. It just depends on the question that you're answering. So please make sure that you're not just repeating the same ideas over and over to fill that talking time. Hopefully you've got the right amount of main ideas and supporting details to get to the end of that response very comfortably. Hopefully you've got about 7 or 8 seconds anyways left over at the end to offer a concluding statement. So in our conclusion, we often will summarize the main idea that we were making, or even perhaps leave a step for the future, your next step, if you will. Sometimes that's also an effective way to finish. Last but not least, we look at your task fulfillment. So this again falls into 2 different areas. So first of all, that length of time that you're asked to speak, the raters want to make sure that you're pretty close to that final time. It doesn't have to be exact, but if you're being asked to speak, say, for 90 seconds, the answer should be very close to that. If you're cut off in the middle of your concluding statement, it should not be a problem as long as you've supported the answer very completely up until then. The raters would understand at that point that you were just finishing, so it shouldn't have a negative effect then on your score. You don't want to finish too early though. If you've got about 20 seconds of silence in your answer, for example, you're not demonstrating your full range of ability. So again, aim to speak for close to that full time. The second part of task fulfillment is how completely you've answered the question. So if there were 2 parts to the question on the test, for example, the raters want to make sure that you've actually addressed both parts in your answer. So we're going to look now at a practice question so that we all can see how these skills are going to come into play as you're practicing at home. So what you're looking at right now is actually a speaking screen from a past Cael test. This is exactly what you would look at if you were taking the test. The screen is set up in the same way. So your question will always be in the top right-hand corner. So I'll just read this one out loud so we can start to think about what it means. So this question says, what are some good strategies to help everyone work together in a group project? Which do you think would be best for you and why? So on your Cael test, your instructions will always be on the left-hand side. And we've just talked about that raters checklist in lots of detail, so we know this by now. You're always going to give details and examples to support your answer. And we know that you're always being scored on your content as well as the accuracy of your language too. Up in the top right-hand corner, you're always going to see the preparation time and the speaking time. So you do have some time to think about your answer at all times here on the Cael test. Your preparation counter clock is going to be right here on the screen. So because this question gives us 60 seconds to think, this clock then is going to start counting backwards from 60 as soon as we start the screen. So you've got that full minute then to read over the question and to perhaps take some quick notes. Start thinking about your answer to this question and write down some key terms. As soon as this counter clock reaches 0, the test is going to ask you to record your answer. And we know here that you'll be speaking for a full 90 seconds for this second question on Cael. So we need to fully understand then what we're going to do with our 60 seconds of preparation time to effectively answer this question. So the very first thing, of course, is to read the question out. We've already read it together here once today, but on the test, remember your prep time includes the length of time it takes for you to read the question through. So you would do that fairly quickly in the matter of say 3 or 4 seconds. And you'll notice here the questions at the bottom of the screen. There are 2 question marks. So that means there are 2 different parts to this question that you're going to need to answer on the Cael test. So the first part of this question asks you to identify some strategies that will help people work together in a group. So remember, for a 90-second question, you'll probably want to come up with at least 3 strategies to be able to describe as you start to record your answer. Don't take up all of your talking time, though, just listing strategies, because there is a second part to this question. You're going to then pick one or even a couple of strategies that you've already mentioned in your answer, and you're going to explain which ones work best for you and why. So again, we do need to make sure that we address both parts of this question as we're speaking. So in this preparation time then, you will be given paper and pen by the testing administrators. So it's strongly recommended that you use the paper and pen to make some basic notes. Now, you're not going to have a lot of time here, so we're not looking for full sentences. We don't even care if the spelling and grammar is correct. You're the only one that's going to see the notes, and they'll be in front of you as you record your answer. So write down whatever main points you plan to discuss in just a moment. So I'm going to show you an example here of some notes that are going to match the sample answer that you'll hear today. All right, so we'll look at how I guess we could take notes and what they might look like. So in every answer we give, we should be providing some sort of an opening statement. And again, the opening statement's purpose is to introduce the topic at hand. So since this question is all about group work, I think it would just be easy enough to introduce the notion that group work is fairly common. You could tie it into school and work, and then maybe just make a statement about its purpose. So how it's beneficial and why it's used. Just a quick overview, right? This is your introduction or topic sentence. You don't want to spend a lot of time just on that one statement because you want to get right into the strategies. This is the answer to the first question here on the test. So again, for a 90-second question, I would recommend you try to come up with at least 3 strategies. If you can think of more, that's great. Write them down for now. But a minimum of 3 would be helpful for this particular question, I would recommend. So here you can see that there are 4 strategies listed. So the first one talks about delegating roles. This just means that you would assign every member of the group a particular responsibility so that everybody has a job to do. The second strategy listed here is all about deadlines. So it makes sense then to set several deadlines and make sure, I guess, that parts of the project are being completed in a particular order and that you hit the main deadline. It's not turned in late, so to speak. The third strategy is all about having meetings, looks like. So I guess checking in and sharing information with one another, and then also taking an opportunity to troubleshoot. So if there are problems, this would be a good time to address them, I guess, before you finish the project. Icebreakers is another strategy here, and this has to do with getting to know the people that you're working with. So as we get to know one another, I suppose we're more trustworthy of each other, and we're more comfortable reaching out when we've got a question or a problem to share. So this is really all about starting professional relationships. So once you've got some strategies listed down, the second part of this question does ask you to pick one or even a couple of strategies that work best for you. So looking at that list in the notes, this person that you're going to hear answer the question chose to speak about these 2 strategies. So relationship building and deadlines. And then of course they have to explain why these strategies are helpful for them. So it looks like this person is more confident when they trust the people they're working with. They've listed cohesion as an idea. So that would be, I guess, how you work together, how you fit smoothly as a group so that it looks like sort of the blending of the ideas, which is usually more effective in a final project. And the time frame as well is important to the speaker so that the project is indeed completed before it's due or by the time that it's due. So I think we're almost ready to listen to this response. In your real test, remember you've got 60 seconds, so hopefully you've got enough time to write down the basic ideas here that you plan to talk about. I'm hoping as well that you've got a little bit of time to put the ideas in a logical order. So looking at the strategies here on the screen, I think it would make the most amount of sense to talk about the icebreakers first. If you're getting to know your team, that would probably be the best starting point. And then the other strategies there, I don't know so much if it matters, but order they're discussed. So I would probably follow the suit there. You'll notice that I've added in at the bottom there, concluding sentence. When you finish off your answer, hopefully you've got time to summarize the main points. I don't think you can think ahead when you're taking notes in the preparation stage, though, as to what you're going to say. When you record your answer, those main ideas presented will be the ones that you'll talk about. So we'll listen into the answer that you're going to hear next to see how well our speaker is able to offer that concluding statement. Now, I'm going to play this sample response for you twice today. We are going to analyze the strengths and the weaknesses of this answer using that checklist that we've already discussed again today. So remember those 4 areas that the raters are looking for. As you listen the first time, though, I'm hoping that you're going to focus exclusively on speech delivery. So can we just get our ear attuned to how effectively, or not, the speaker's using pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation? If you notice any big pauses, or if you notice frequent interjections, I'd like also for you just to note that down. All right, so again, you're looking for strengths or weaknesses. After we've listened to this answer together, we'll share some ideas. Okay, but here's the answer the first time through. Let's take a listen now.
Often encouraged at school and in the office because collaboration can increase productivity and also create very high quality final results. There are many strategies that would lead to successful teamwork. The very first thing that I would recommend is for the people working as a team to get to know one another, even on a personal level. If we can build relationships together, we learn to trust each other, and we're also more comfortable reaching out if we need help. So that would also move the project along. I think delegating roles so that each person in the team has a very specific part to play and is very aware of their own responsibilities towards a group project would also make sure that all aspects of the project are completed. Deadlines should be implemented for different sections or different parts of the project as well. I think if things are left open-ended, we don't get very much done. So if we meet regularly, we have more of an opportunity to troubleshoot and to check in with one another to make sure that we're on track. The best strategies that lead me to success when I'm working as part of a team would be relationship building. I really need to feel secure in the team that I'm working with, and also I need deadlines because, again, it will ensure that the project is completed in good time. When each team member contributes to the project, there's a stronger likelihood that the collaborative effort will produce strong results.
Okay, so the first thing I'll mention here is that this speaker managed to just finish that concluding statement right on time. So this entire answer from start to finish was about 90 seconds, and that is exactly the length of time that this test question asked you to fill. So if you're studying from home, use this model, I guess, just to demonstrate the length of what it is you're aiming for. I'm going to suggest that the speech delivery was very strong overall. I think the volume was fine. I mean, it was loud and clear. The pronunciation was also very clear. I think the pacing was fine. There was a little bit of a rushed speech here and there, particularly at the end. I think our speaker wanted to sneak in that concluding statement before the timer reached 0. So it seemed to me a little bit rushed there. But again, overall, even without looking at a transcript, I would suggest that we could understand the words that she was saying. And that's key. That's your ultimate goal as you're speaking. The listener needs to hear and understand what it is you're saying. I think intonation was fine. The voice rose, the voice fell very naturally. So that was all fine and well. I didn't notice a single interjection, which is really rare, actually. It's very difficult to achieve. So when we're able to speak from start to finish without saying and ah, it demonstrates that you're very prepared. You've got both the vocabulary and the ideas, so you know what it is you're going to say next. It also demonstrates that you've done lots of practicing at home so that you're comfortable and confident getting your ideas out. So I'd give top notch there. There might have been a handful of pauses, but again, that's natural to a point as you're thinking about how to frame your answers on a test like this. The only tiny mistake I noticed was right towards the end. It was a pronunciation error. So the word is contribute. This is the word that our speaker was meant to have said. She pronounced that word as contribute. This is just a very common error that a lot of people make, whether they're first language speakers or not of English. All right, but one little tiny pronunciation mistake is not going to affect the score there for speech delivery. So overall, I would say quite well done. We're going to have a look now at the response again. We'll listen to it again. But this time, as we're listening, I'm hoping that we can follow the transcript. On a real test, there won't be a transcript. The speaker, or the raters, I mean, are going to just listen to what you're talking about, and they'll give you a score accordingly. But because we're studying together, I think it's just most helpful if we can see the words on the screen, so you have a better sense of the content and the vocabulary as well. So your job this time, please, as you're listening, is really to focus in on the accuracy of language. So please try to identify some of these conjunctions and transitions. In other words, the linking words that the speaker is using to combine these short, simple ideas into longer, more complex structures. You can also have a really good look for some higher level vocabulary too. So we'll discuss that in just a moment after we've heard the second time.
Is often encouraged at school and in the office because collaboration can increase productivity and also create very high quality final results. There are many strategies that would lead to successful teamwork. The very first thing that I would recommend is for the people working as a team to get to know one another, even on a personal level. If we can build relationships together, we learn to trust each other, and we're also more comfortable reaching out if we need help. So that would also move the project along. I think delegating roles so that each person in the team has a very specific part to play and is very aware of their own responsibilities towards a group project would also make sure that all aspects of the project are completed. Deadlines should be implemented for different sections or different parts of the project as well. I think if things are left open-ended, we don't get very much done. So if we meet regularly, we have more of an opportunity to troubleshoot and to check in with one another to make sure that we're on track. The best strategies that lead me to success when I'm working as part of a team would be relationship building. I really need to feel secure in the team that I'm working with, and also I need deadlines because, again, it will ensure that the project is completed in good time. When each team member contributes to the project, there's a stronger likelihood that the collaborative effort will produce strong results.
Okay, so I'm going to show first the transitions and the conjunctions, and these are the words in red that we now see on the screen. At a very quick glance, we see at first, I guess, more of the common and simpler conjunctions used. So these would be the words and, so, and also. I think these words in particular are among the most commonly used words in English. So I'm sure at some point we'll all use these words in order to connect our ideas together, and that's fine. But we need to make sure for this academic test that we are also using higher level words. And in this case, I think the speaker has done that quite well. I do see higher level conjunctions like because, if, and when. So these are setting up these complex sentence structures correctly. There's also a nice use of a transition towards the top there. She says the very first thing, and she gets into her list of strategies. So overall, I think she's demonstrated a decent variety there with some complex structures and again, a good variety of sentence structures overall. I'm also hoping that you were able to pick out at least a handful of higher level vocabulary words that the speaker uses that not only suit the question, but are also demonstrating this academic tone. So these are all the blue words on the screen. So she's used words like encouraged, collaboration, productivity, recommend, delegating roles, aware of their own responsibilities. She says deadlines should be implemented, opportunity to troubleshoot, relationship building. She mentions secure, deadlines, ensure, and in her closing, she says collaborative effort. So all of these words are grammatically correct, but again, they're very suitable for the question at hand. They're very precise. She's demonstrating good vocabulary knowledge there. There are two phrases here that are a little bit on the casual side, and you'll notice that they've been bolded and italicized. So just about halfway through the screen, you'll see the phrase, we don't get very much done. We understand that idea. It's just a little bit simple. So I think if we could go back and revise this for the speech, we might say something like, we are much less productive, right? That just sounds a little higher level. The second example I see towards the bottom where she says about the project being completed in good time. That's a little bit of a casual expression as well. She could easily have just said completed on time. I think that might have been a little bit more precise. But at any rate, you can see that the number of higher level examples far outweigh the couple of phrases we found that were a bit on the casual side. So again, our speaker is demonstrating very sound knowledge of vocabulary and using those words correctly. Let's look at her content next. So I think her framework has been established very well. And this is a testament, I believe, to how effectively she's taken notes. So remember back to that screen we looked at as to how she was going to answer this question. Her opening sentence does introduce what group work is all about. So she does mention it's being used at school and in the office. And she just connects that to increasing productivity and creating high quality final results. It's just a general statement as to why group work is used. And then that leads right into the strategies that go along with that. So I think it's a fine introduction. Her closing as well brings this question back almost full circle as well. She's emphasizing the positive results of teamwork right in the closing here. So the coherence is quite strong. The way that the entire answer is framed and how these ideas connect is showing a nice smooth connections, which is exactly what you're hoping to do. So now when we look at the middle ideas, we're looking for main ideas and supporting details. We notice that the speaker does effectively address both parts of this question. So we've color-coded the screen here to easily demonstrate that. So the green ideas represent the main ideas and supporting details that answer that first part of the Cael test question. So this is where she was just asked to identify some strategies for group work. So you'll notice we have the word strategies right up there in the second line. We've underlined it just to emphasize that. And you can see those 4 different examples of strategies that she listed in her notes in the same order that she chose to speak about are there. So she talks about getting to know one another, delegating roles, having deadlines, and meeting regularly. What I particularly like about this response too, though, is the balance. So after each of these strategies has been introduced, do you notice that there's a sentence or 2 of explanation to fully support what that strategy is all about? And the supporting details, as I say, they're balanced. She doesn't spend all of her time talking about one strategy and not developing the others. Instead, she spends the exact same amount of time developing each and every main idea presented. So this is a very high level way to organize your answers. The orange ideas at the bottom there address the second part of the Cael test question. So remember, she was asked to pick a strategy, or I guess a couple of strategies that are best for her. So she's introduced that idea, first of all, with that phrase. She says, the best strategies that lead me to success. And then she's chosen relationship building and deadlines. And she just chose those 2 out of the list above that she's already talked about. So that makes it, again, a nicely organized answer. And she does spend a moment for each of these strategies explaining why they're helpful for her. So she has, after all, fully and completely answered all parts of the Cael test question. So the task fulfillment is quite strong. And remember, we've already indicated that she has spoken for the full 90 seconds too. So again, overall, task fulfillment has been done quite nicely here. So let's finish up today by discussing the strategies that we would use as we're practicing this second question in the speaking test. So again, this is in part 1 of Cael. We call it independent speaking type B because you're only speaking, and type B means it's the second question in this section. Remember, this question will always ask you to speak for 90 seconds. So to comfortably fill that 90-second time frame, it's a really strong suggestion to have at least 3 different main ideas to fill up that time. So in the first part of the question today, there were actually 4 strategies that were introduced. And then of those, 2 were chosen to support her best strategies for group work. When you begin your answer, feel free to give a general statement. And I think that's what our speaker did today. She opened up just by explaining group work was used in school or in the office, and that it can lead to productive results. That's just a very nice general way to introduce this topic of group work. Other questions might ask for more of an opinion. And if that's the case, then you would state your opinion first. But based on today's practice question, the general statement was the most effective way to go here. And then, of course, we want to clearly introduce each idea. So she used a transition to say something about how the strategies of group work are, and she got into the list. And then remember, towards the bottom, she also said, the strategies that best lead me to success are. So we always knew what part of the test question that she was going to be talking about there as well. The information that we talk about, it is going to be about you in some capacity, but we just need to make sure that you're not presenting your information in a biased way. We want to be unbiased. So what that means is talk about what works best for you, but don't frame, in this case, the strategies to indicate that this is the only way we should do it. That wouldn't be realistic. Okay, so again, talk about your personal experiences, but don't push those on everybody else's ideas or feelings. It's more or less what that means. Because this is a story about you, it's perfectly fine to use that pronoun I. You're going to be using facts or possibly personal examples, but it's okay to say I and my best strategies because it is a personalized story after all. So feel free to do that. And again, at the end of every answer, we're hoping that we have time for a very brief concluding statement. And our speaker did have to rush her speech a little bit to fit that in before the timer reached 0, but she was able to conclude with a statement about grit work and how it can be productive. So top marks, sir. This is a really another nice practice question to look at as you're studying from home. So I'm hoping that it's giving you ideas about how you might want to structure your own answers. Hopefully, after you've had a rest, you can try answering this question yourself. Follow the same framework, but maybe change the strategies so that you can experiment with your own vocabulary. Join me next week as we continue to practice our skills here with the independent speaking type B. I'll see you then.